Accidental Safety Pro, brought to you by Vivid Learning Systems and HSI Company. Episode number 19. My name is Jill James, Vivid's Chief Safety Officer, and today I'm joined by Chevon, who is a safety professional from Wisconsin, currently working in the safety and training education industry. Chevon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill.
Oh, it's so great to be with a fellow Midwesterner again, and we'll see what people think about our accents. I have a feeling that mine is like already worse than yours. You must not have grown up in the Midwest, or did you?
No, I did. I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, so I've been here the majority of my life.
Dang, somehow you got around
I
it.
know. I guess I lucked out. If I go to other parts of the country, they don't say that. They can still hear it. So,
Do you get asked often if you're from Canada?
sometimes I feel like the further south I go in the country, then the more I hear people saying that I sound like I'm from Canada, and I say no, but close.
Yeah, right. I say the same thing, but maybe we should just start saying yes because it sounds like more exotic.
Right.
You know, you're from another country, Canada. Anyway, so Chevon, interested to hear your story today and how you accidentally got into the safety and health industry, and how many years have you been in safety and health?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I guess close to 13 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Well, how did you find your way into it?
Well, it's funny because, you say, how did you accidentally get into it? And I don't know if I did it accidentally.
Okay.
So
Oh, you might be the one. Whoa, episode number 19, the one person who knew since she was a little girl.
I don't know. I mean, well,
No?
I don't know if
Okay.
I knew it. So here's kind of
Yeah.
the thing is my mom actually teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater in the occupational and environmental safety and health department.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She's been teaching there since 1983, so since I was 2, I guess I'll date myself. So, yeah, and so I grew up around it. Other kids, didn't grow up around safety. I grew up doing fire drills in our house once a quarter.
Wow.
When we would get new, just household chemicals in the house, she would spend time reading the labels and showing us the labels and showing us what was wrong with it and why she didn't want us to use certain things. And, when we moved into our new house and it had a second story, so that was when I was around 9 or 10, she got us all ladders that we could use to get out of our window in case of a fire. I mean, these were all normal things. And I would hear her, I remember when they were building the house, and she would say, it would really be cool if we put a sprinkler system in the house. And I'm thinking, why would we need a sprinkler system in our house? And I remember her having conversations with my dad about her concerns with having carpeting everywhere and having an attached garage and all of these things. And it was just normal for me to hear all of that.
So you grew up with like a super safety mom.
Yeah.
That is like somehow I'm feeling like I might be slightly inadequate as a safety mom. I haven't done the chemical training with my son. We've talked about like meeting locations and emergencies outside the house. Wow. That's fantastic.
She would talk about all the stuff, and she'd come home from class and talk about different things. And so, she talks about everything, but the classes that she taught the most, back then it was called Industrial Accident Prevention. And then she also taught Fire Protection and Prevention. And that was actually the class she liked the most. So, everything that there is to talk about with that, we would hear commonly just day by day.
Right.
But, it was me and I have an older sister. She's 7 years older than me. I don't know why this didn't get embedded in her. She went in a totally different trajectory with her career.
Is she like a professional skydiver or something?
Actually, it's funny. She went to school. Her major was in theater and her minor was in art. And she's now, she works for a bank collecting, basically in their debt collections department. and she helps to collect on people who aren't paying their mortgages. So she does something completely different from what she went to school for.
Yeah.
But with me, I grew up with all of this. And so I was coming up on my senior year of high school, and it was one of those situations where I was ahead with all of my credits and I was ahead with all of the classes that I needed to take. So I was meeting with my guidance counselor, and he suggested that I look into taking a course at college.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home and I'm talking to my parents about it. And my mom said, well, you're going to have to take intro to safety when you go to college anyway, if you decide that you're going to go to UW Whitewater, which I knew that's what I wanted to do. She said, so why don't you take that? And Craig, he was the one who was teaching the class, and I had known him since I was little because my mom had been working there since I was
Mm-hmm.
little. So I said, okay, that sounds like fun. And so I went and I took the class and learned a lot of things, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it a lot, actually, and did a
Mm-hmm.
really good job in it. And then I got done with my high school, with my senior year of high school, and graduated. And I started getting this, I don't know, almost a panic over me because I knew that I really liked safety, but something in me was saying, you can't be exactly like your mom. You've got to go and do something else. Like, you got
The
to go be
struggle.
yeah, you got to go be your own person, be your own person. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I went to start school, the other passion that I had was in music, which my parents weren't surprised because my sister being the art major and the
Mm-hmm.
theater major, they said, well, sure, of course you like music. So I decided I was going to be a music major and it was going to be great. And maybe I was going to play in an orchestra someday. I was really good at piano and clarinet. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was my thought. And I started going through the program and stayed in it for maybe a year and a half, and really started thinking about it. And I said, the only way I'm really going to make any good money, this is the feedback I'm getting from professors, is the only
Mm-hmm.
way I'm really going to make any good money is if I go all the way up to getting my doctorate and then I teach at a
Yeah.
university.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I don't want to do that.
I'm like my mom anyway, then.
I'm
Teaching at a
like,
university, right?
yeah. So I said,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. And so then I realized, okay, well, instead of continuing to stumble through college, maybe let's pump the brakes and take some time to figure out what we really want to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
I took a semester off. And while I was going to college, I was also working part time at a collections agency because my sister was working there. And she said, well,
Mm-hmm.
you need money, I'll get you a job. And I said, all right, I guess I'll
Mm-hmm.
be a debt collector, which
Hmm.
was really interesting. And it actually helped with my sales skills and made me realize
Mm-hmm.
that if you can sell a negative product, like getting people to pay their debt, you can
Mm-hmm.
probably sell anything. So it was a good experience, but I started working there full time when I decided to take a semester off of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day just sitting there and thinking, this can't be what I do for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a manager at the time who said, well, I went to college and then I decided to quit and I started doing this full time. And look at me now. And I mean, she was good as a manager, but there were so many other things that I would hear her talk about day in and day out of things that she was unhappy about. And I
Yeah.
said, well, if that's how it's going to be, then I need to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be like that. And so then I'm sitting here and I'm like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I was talking with my dad and he said, I don't know why you're fighting it. And I said, fighting what? And he said,
Yeah,
the
right?
only thing you've ever been interested in is safety. And he said, your mom would come home and talk about things. Your sister was never interested in it, but you always were.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why are you fighting it? And I said, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be like my mom.
Sounds like your mom was a great role
She
model
was
and
a
so
she's an
and still
amazing
is.
role
Yeah,
model. I
right?
don't know what my problem was. And so I said, well, I'll just take a couple classes and see how
Okay,
it
okay.
goes.
Yeah.
So I went back part-time and I got through my chemistry classes and physics classes, but I was taking a class here and there in safety as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, what am I doing? So I went back full-time, dove right into safety, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Hmm.
I think the only regret I have now is that I didn't realize it sooner.
But I bet you built some pretty interesting skills. Like you said, when you were doing the debt collection work, it helped you with sales skills, which we all need in safety. But I bet it also sharpened some empathy skills too. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, you were hearing a lot of stories every day from people about their life circumstances.
and I'll tell you something. I think that I had too much empathy
So
because
this was not the, yeah, okay.
it was not the job for me. You
Uh-huh.
know, there were people who were hitting these crazy goals of how much money they were bringing in every month, and I was the person who, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. Go ahead and pay $5 a month for the next 20 years. I'm totally fine with
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
And so, my managers weren't the happiest with that, but you're right. I mean, I would hear all these different stories, and
Mm-hmm.
I found myself having compassion for a lot of the people
Yeah.
that we were talking to.
Right.
So,
And rightfully so very often, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, backing up when you said everyone has to take intro to safety at Whitewater. Is that is that a requirement of the college, or did your mom or is that your mom saying like you have to take intro to safety?
Here's the thing is I think it was her more saying that I had to do that. Now,
Uh-huh.
I know that since then, they've updated the program, and I think now it's called personal and public safety.
Oh,
And
what a
now
great idea.
I think it now is a requirement for students to
Mhm.
take. But back then, I think she just told me it was a requirement, and it
Mhm.
really wasn't. And she knew before I did that this was the
Yeah.
field that I needed to be in, and
Yeah.
she was just trying to get me in the right direction. So when that day came and I told her, okay, I'm going to become a
Yeah.
safety and health major, I just, words can't describe the glow that immediately started beaming off of her, and
Aw,
it's been a fun ride ever since. So
that's so great.
yeah, but I
That's
had to
so
have
great.
her as a teacher twice, and that was a little
Yeah, what's that
interesting.
like?
Well, the first time I had her, I sat back in the back corner of the room. I was trying not to, because the other thing is, if you saw me and then you saw my mom, you know that I am my mother's daughter. It's
Mhm.
almost like I was cloned from her. So I'm sitting in the back corner and I'm trying not to have anyone make that connection. And it was the first semester that when she would do roll call, because she was all about roll call, that she
Mhm.
used the first names instead of the last names.
Ah.
So we were
Mhm.
trying really hard to hide that
Yeah.
connection. And I think we made it about two-thirds of the way through class. And then there was one day she had to step out for some reason. And students finally started turning to me and said, okay, you must be her niece or something. And I
Mhm.
remember replying with, or something. And one of the other students said, are you her daughter? And I said, maybe.
That's so awesome. Oh, I
So
love this story.
by the time I had her for the second class, everyone knew, obviously, and it was kind of a
Mhm.
running joke. But people would say, so does she help you with assignments? And that was the other thing. When she was my teacher,
Mhm.
I didn't talk to her. Like,
Yeah.
I went and talked to her in class. I rarely talked to her outside of class. And it was both ways. She was doing it too. Because I
Yeah.
didn't want people thinking that I wanted to earn those grades on my own. And so
Yeah.
I probably got less help from her than other students did because we didn't want anyone to think that or to assume that.
You didn't want to play the nepotism card.
No, not at all, not
Right.
at all. So, but
So I'm
we survived through it, and it worked out
yeah.
great.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering when you were a little kid growing up with super safety mom, and you're doing your fire drills and you're doing training on chemicals and having your escape ladders, which I did as well with my son in our house
Yeah.
too. I'm wondering, for anyone who's raising kids who have children in their life, who are also safety professionals, growing up like you did, do you think it made you hyper vigilant or just vigilant? You know how people say, well, if you give them too much information, it's just going to scare them. You're scaring people they can't live. I
Yeah.
personally don't agree with that. But I'm wondering, what was that like for you? What did, yeah, what did that, what do you remember as a kid and how did that turn into your older life?
I remember it being normal.
Yeah.
Nothing about it seemed weird or abnormal or something that isn't supposed to be happening in a family. I mean, the way that she presented the information, the way she covered it with us, I to me it all made sense, which maybe it's cuz this was kind of embedded in me anyway.
Yeah, right.
But I don't remember it being, something out of the ordinary. It just seemed like it was a
Mm-hmm.
natural part of growing up. Now, I know that when I would talk to other friends about it as I would get older and I'd notice things and start pointing things out, they would look at me
Mm-hmm.
like I was weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then
Yeah,
I
what
would
was
just
it?
look at them like, well, what do you mean it's weird? Why wouldn't you want to know what,
Right.
kind of safety you need to do to protect yourself? Why wouldn't you want to know that you shouldn't plug in a lot of things into your power strip, or
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that chemicals are kept in this area for a certain reason, or that there should
Yeah.
be a meeting place if there's a fire? Why wouldn't you want to
Mm-hmm.
know these things? So
Mm-hmm.
I never, I don't know, when friends would react that way, I guess I would have the equal but opposite reaction back to
That's
them.
great. Yeah. What was it like when you had your first like sleepovers, or you're going to other people's houses? I know what I did as a mom, so I'm curious to know what super mom did.
So, I mean, Supermom really tried her best not to impose that on my friends. And so
Mm-hmm.
she would try as hard as she could, but she would talk about certain things. She would
Yeah.
say, if there ends up being a tornado, we're going to hide underneath, the stair. At that time, she said, we're going to hide underneath the stairwell in the basement. And then I remember getting older and her saying, no, that's not a good idea. What we need to do is we need to figure out what direction the tornado is coming in so we can sit in the opposite corner. I mean, she would talk about
Yeah.
things like that. And she would
Yeah.
talk about where we're going to meet if there was a fire.
Yeah.
But outside of that, she really wouldn't try to push too much on them because I think she
Mm-hmm.
knew that not a lot of families did what
Did.
she
Yeah.
did, and she
Uh-huh.
didn't want to be that weird mom that now kids don't want to spend the night at your house because she's freaking them out.
Yeah. Right.
And then I would try really hard not to bring those things up when I would go to friends' houses because I guess I kind of learned from my mom that not everyone has that safety sense, and you don't want to be that kid that no one wants to invite over anymore.
Right.
So I would try hard not to do it, but sometimes, especially if something she talked about seemed really cool, I don't know,
Yeah. Right. Of
I'd
course.
bring it up.
Absolutely.
It just I liked
Yeah.
it.
When my son was little, I remember the first time he asked me, and I don't remember what the context was. He just said, Mom, what's our safety plan for that? And I'm like, oh, okay. But I also remember like calling his friends' parents' houses when he would go and spend time asking about firearms
Oh yeah.
and, were they locked up and those kind of questions. And I thought, well, I have a right to ask that as a parent. And they were, legitimate, I think, questions to ask. And his little friends now, they're not little anymore. They're all teenagers. And when we go about and do things with them, they all are like, all right, Jill, when is it coming? What's the safety plan? This past Halloween, the kids always do, we always organize for them a scavenger hunt with an app called, it's a really cool app. I'll think of it and share it with people because you can do your own scavenger hunt through an app, and you can go around to different places in a community and take photos of what you're supposed to be finding, or set a point on a map like I got to this place or I saw this or whatever.
Okay.
Goose Chase, that's the name of the app.
Oh.
And so this year the kids are like, okay, we're going to do the scavenger hunt again, right? And I'm like, yep, but you all have driver's licenses. So do you still want the teams of parents driving you around to these places, or are you going to do it on your own? And they're like, we're going to drive. And so we're like, okay, new safety plan. We've got drivers. Like, the person who's driving the car is not engaged in the game. You are simply the driver. Do you still want to play? Yes. So Three cars of teenage boys driving around a community playing their Goose Chase
Oh
app,
my
and
goodness.
I know. Anyway, so safety mom at play there. Uh, so Siobhan, you graduated with a bachelor's degree in safety.
Yes, so I graduated back in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, before I graduated, I did my internship at an insurance agency.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to
Cool.
learn a lot in regards to risk management. And I call him my mentor, his name was Jack. One of the best lessons that I felt I could have gotten from Jack was just understanding that my list is never going to end. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
going to have a list at the end of the day, and if I can just come to terms with that, then I should be okay. And he's right, because I'll have a lot of times where I feel my list is a million miles long and I can't tell if I've put a dent into it.
Right. It's so. I mean, that is so true. That it was perfect and great advice from Jack. Our work is never done,
Yeah.
and you have to be okay with that because it's gonna make you crazy if if you're not.
It is. And there are
Yeah.
some times where it starts to make me feel crazy, but then I think about that and
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, no, this is good. This is good. And
Yeah.
obviously, he taught me a lot of other things. He was teaching me about loss control and risk assessments and things like that. So it was a great internship, and it definitely guided me into my future career path. So
Yeah.
I loved working with him, and I would tell other people all the time, if you have any way to either connect with him or work with him, it's great, because
Yeah.
he had a lot of wisdom to share.
And it allows you to see the insurance industry allows you to see a lot of different types of workplaces too,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I only saw a few of them during my internship, but I saw a lot more once I graduated from college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what happened next after the internship? What was the first job?
Yeah, so I actually did a training program with a large property and casualty insurance carrier down in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could have stayed with that company, but it was one of those things where you did the training program and it was for loss control. And so you
Mm-hmm.
finish the training program, and actually, let me back up, when you start the training program, they ask, what areas do you want to work in, or what regions of the country do you want to work in once you're done?
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, I'd really like to stay, either in Illinois or in Wisconsin, because I really did like staying close to home. A lot of our family is in those areas, and that's just where I wanted to be. I like this area. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I got done with the training program, they had no openings. It was for me, and there was another employee who was in the program, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have any openings in the area. So it was kind of what are we going to do with you now? And I was
Yeah.
fortunate that when I first started the training program, the person who they basically assigned to me to be my mentor, he left a few months after I started and went to a different insurance carrier. And when he heard that this was happening to me, he told his boss about it, and they reached out and said, let's have lunch. So we had lunch, and they liked what I had learned, and he liked the time that he spent working with me, and he was advocating, she's really sharp, and work comp will be her baby, but she can handle all the lines of insurance. She'll do great. And so they hired me on. So I kind of lucked out, because the first carrier really didn't know what to do with me. So I was kind of nervous. I said, well, does this mean I don't have a job, or what's
Yeah.
getting ready to happen?
Wow.
So
You've had great mentors.
I have. It was really yeah, it was great, and it was a nice transition, and the carrier that I went to really got me exposure to seeing a lot of different industries. So I wasn't just going to machine shops. Now I was getting to check out heat treat plants and foundries, and different types of food manufacturing. And in Illinois, they have the state insurance pool for people who can't get work comp insurance through a regular carrier. So I was doing a lot of investigations in there, just work comp related, for the state pool. So then I was getting to see a lot of small contractors and those smaller businesses that maybe only have a few employees. So I got exposure from that
Yeah.
sense. And then I went to my first slaughterhouse while I worked there, which was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fun.
Right.
And I went to my first rendering plant, which was
Yeah.
very interesting. And
Aren't
when
they?
they say
Uh-huh.
make sure you bring a change of clothes, I definitely understood it after I visited
Uh-huh.
that rendering plant that yeah, I
Uh-huh.
don't want any of this touching
Uh-huh.
anything in my car and
And the smell infuses
oh
everything. I remember the first rendering plant that I went to, I thought, oh my gosh, the leather in my belt smells. Like you couldn't get it, you couldn't
and
get it out. Yeah.
and I was kind of embarrassed because I got sick. I was in there for not even
Mm.
10 minutes and the gentleman who was taking me through the facility could see the color draining from my face. And so
Yeah.
he just pointed at a bucket. And I said, "Oh." And so I went over and I did end up getting sick. And I walked back over and he said, "It happens to everyone the first
Mm-hmm.
time." And he said, "We
Mm-hmm.
prepare you as much as we can." He said, "Get stuff to put under your nose, like Vicks Vapor Rub or something so
Yeah.
that you aren't smelling it." I mean, he was telling me everything to do, but he said everyone goes through it. And he
Yeah.
said that's why we have the buckets.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say as you're telling this story, I'm like, don't feel bad.
I
Oh,
know.
it's the closest I ever got to vomiting on the job. It was
Oh,
in a meat packing plant, or not meat packing plant, a rendering plant, and I don't know where you were in the plant, but where it happened to me, I didn't end up vomiting, but I was as close as I have ever been at work, in the loadout bay. So if you can imagine where all the trucks come in, all the big
yes.
semi trailers with all of the various carcasses,
Uh
and
huh.
it was July when I was in one in Minnesota, and it was very hot. And it's all of these trucks kind of back down into this a bit of a pit, and there's a roof over it, to protect from the various weather events in Minnesota, and so it was like tight and humid and hot, and I was walking between all of the trailers because I was checking on like the chalking of the trailers and looking for hazards, doing my job with OSHA, and I was like very overcome with that smell of death. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to get myself out of here because I'm not going to make it.
You
So,
can't see me, but I'm over here nodding my head because that was pretty much the exact same thing that
really?
happened to me. Yes, it was where everything was coming in into their big pit, and he was kind of showing me the whole process, and
Yeah.
it didn't work out well. But then once I relieved myself, then I was
Yeah.
fine for the rest of the tour.
The rest
So,
of the tour.
so that was good.
Oh man, these safety jobs, they have us doing the craziest
I
things.
know. And I kind of felt
Uh,
like I was being initiated. I was being sent
right?
to, some of the neighborhoods too that I was being sent to were a little sketchy at times, and that would make me nervous as well. But at the same time, I think I also had a little bit of naive going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I maybe wasn't always realizing just how sketchy it was until after the
Mm-hmm.
fact. So
Yeah.
I felt like that was my, getting initiated
Yeah.
into the group or
Some
something like that. I
something.
don't know.
All life lessons that built one on another that have taken you
Yeah.
to the next place. Yeah. So what did you like best about the insurance industry?
I'd say honestly, I think what I liked the best was being able to go out and see all of the different types of businesses that they insure and being able to see the different exposures that employees have
Mm-hmm.
depending on the operation I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
Just yeah, being able to experience so many different industries and operations and learning what they do. I was really thankful they had a subscription to, I believe it was called AM Best. And so I could go in there and I could pull up either their SIC code or their NAICS code and,
Mm-hmm.
be able to pull up basically a write up of what I was going to go see and
Mm-hmm.
the different exposures that I would see depending on the different lines of insurance. So it was just, for me, it was just a big learning
Yeah.
experience and
Yeah.
getting that exposure to all the different types of jobs that are out there.
Yeah. And I think at least for me, I'm wondering if this has been for you as well, as a consumer of things, having been in so many different types of industry settings where things are made or processed, I feel like I look at my consumables just like in my house or in my grocery store and think, oh, that was made by a punch press,
Mm-hmm.
or that was, in a plating industry, or the number of hands that had to touch that piece of meat that I'm now holding in my hand have been probably, this many. Do you think that about consumer things as well, having just seen all this stuff?
I do, and I feel that I have a lot more respect for the things that I use day in and day
Mm-hmm.
out in my life now, or, in my kids' lives, or, things
Yeah.
like that, because just knowing all of the time and energy that was put into making one diaper, or, making a plate of food or things like that, it's just,
Right.
it really changes your perspective on things.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a plastic injected molded toy that my kids got,
I know.
right?
And then I'll
Yeah.
start talking about it, and my husband's like, "Really? You're going there again?"
We're okay,
I tell myself that all the time.
Siobhan. What was the next stop on your journey?
Well, yeah, so I started that job with the second carrier in Illinois, and then they ended up moving me up to Milwaukee, where I spent the rest of my time there, probably a year and a half, because they were
Mm-hmm.
starting to do layoffs down in the Chicago area, and they were trying to
Mm.
get me to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went up to Milwaukee and worked there for a while, and then I started getting an itch because I'd go out and I would make these recommendations and then have no idea if they were helping because you wouldn't see them again for 3 years.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
it was kind of getting a little frustrating. I wanted to know if I was actually making a difference.
Right.
So I decided to work with I changed gears and became a safety specialist with a beverage manufacturer in the Milwaukee area
Mm-hmm.
for about 6 months. And it was a great learning experience. Unfortunately, so you have great bosses and you have bosses that aren't always so
Yep.
great.
Yes. Been there.
And that
Mm-hmm.
was an experience where the boss that I had, we didn't see eye to eye on a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things. And so I made the decision that I needed to leave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. I mean, and after 6 months, that was good.
Well, and it was
Yeah.
but I decided I needed to leave, but at the same time, I could tell that she was feeling the same way. So one way or another, I think that was going to happen, and
Yeah.
I wanted to do it on my own terms. So,
Yep.
so I did that. The unfortunate thing was there was no plan B.
Yeah.
I didn't really think it through. I just knew I got to get out of this environment. It was toxic pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I left, and that was, in 2010, and it was still hard to find positions at that time.
Yeah. Right.
So I ended up being out of work, and I would pick up little, consulting jobs on the side here and there. But that was about a year of, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got lucky because then a position opened up with another food manufacturer, and I threw my resume out there and met with that manager. And she had looked at the place I was at prior, and she said, "I've heard things." So that's another thing I'm realizing is, even though this is a large community, safety and health professionals, it's a large community, but it's a small community.
It is.
And
Mm-hmm.
so she said,
Mm-hmm.
"I've heard about your boss." And she said, "So I'm not even going to hold that against you." And she took a chance with me and she hired me on, and
Oh.
it was a great experience. And so it was a pet food manufacturer, and
Hmm.
there was just under 300 employees on 3 shifts.
Mm-hmm.
It was a union environment, so I got to
First
have
time for that.
experience with
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
And it was really cool. I started out as a safety coordinator, and then she ended up leaving, and so I was an interim safety manager.
Hmm.
I really wanted the safety manager position, but with this company, they had a thing where the only way you could move up was if you moved to a different plant.
Mm. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if I wanted to stay there, my glass ceiling was safety coordinator. I couldn't
Yeah.
get to safety manager without moving, and I didn't want to do that. So
Mhm.
I did the interim thing, and then they hired a new manager. And so I'll say the good thing about working there was getting to engage with the employees every day. And it's true what they say, you're going to get a lot further in the program if you just take that time to actually get to know them, not
Yeah.
have it just be all about work, and really invest your time and build those relationships. And I think that's the
Mhm.
part of the job I loved the most.
Mhm.
And then it just made it easier when we implemented new programs. We implemented a behavior-based safety program, and it was
Mhm.
easier to get their buy-in because I had
You
spent
had
that time.
trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we started doing job safety analyses, and so getting their buy-in on, I know this is going to take time, but I promise you that management is going to support it. Because at that time, we did have that support. We had a plant manager that was all about safety. My safety manager was all about building those relationships as well. She was out on the floor just as much as I was, and so we
Mhm.
really had all of that engagement and support, and everything was going well, and our incident rates were really low, and we were going in the right direction, and everything was going really well. And then my manager left, and we eventually got a new safety manager, and his style was different. He felt that he should just be behind the desk,
Mhm.
and so that was a little bit of a struggle. And then we got a new
Yeah.
plant manager, and his focus was on production. And we'll get to safety when we can get to safety.
Mhm.
And talk
Mhm.
about seeing progress just disappear in a matter of, it almost felt like minutes. I know it wasn't
Yeah.
minutes,
It's
but
so yeah.
it
I've
takes so
had that
much time to
experience
build
too.
it up,
Mhm.
and then to see how quickly it can be
It
torn
can
down.
go. Uh-huh.
It broke my
Yeah.
heart. It really
Yes.
did.
It is traumatic and it does break your heart. I've been on the receiving end of that as well. Mhm.
Yeah, and so you're
See your
trying your
legacy kind of
best, and
disappear before your very eyes.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
still trying to say, but I'm still here for you, and I'm still, trying to do my best. But
Right.
they saw what upper management was doing, and then it became a thing of, why should we care
Right.
if they don't care?
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
was a bit of a, that was
Hmm.
a harsh reality check, I guess.
Yeah. And
Um,
how wonderful that you had such great mentors early in your career to kind of help set that compass, if you will, so
yeah.
that when you saw these things happening later, I mean, did it help you like with the confidence to say this isn't right and it's time to move on?
It did. I think it helped a lot, because once I realized that was the direction that that culture was going in, and I
Mhm.
said, well, if I don't have the support, there's no way I'm going to get it back where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give up on them. So I mean, I was kind of in that position where I would entertain the idea of something if it came across my lap, but I
Yeah.
didn't really want to look, because I felt like I was going to
Letting
let
him
them down,
down.
and I didn't
Yeah.
want to do that.
Uh-huh.
But
Mhm.
it turned out that a recruiter from a staffing company, had seen my profile on LinkedIn and
Mhm.
reached out and said, would you be interested in talking to us? And at the time, it was really just for a safety admin role. So
Mhm.
their idea was that I do part safety admin functions and part work comp functions.
Mm.
And I said, well, I'll come in and talk about it, but it didn't feel like that was going to be a step up in my career.
Yeah.
But it never hurts, and I was thinking, if anything, I'll make some connections, and so, I'm fine with that. And so I met with who ended up being my future boss, and we started having a conversation. I started talking about, my career thus far, and I don't know, we clicked.
Mhm.
And she realized, this was back in 2013, so this was when OSHA came out with their temporary worker initiative. And she
Yeah.
knew that if she was going to succeed in building a good program, she was going to need some people with my skills who could be out there working with the different um, staffing offices, and working with the temps out in the field, and working with the
Mhm.
customers that they actually provide temporary employees to.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
she ended up making an argument to the owners of the company, stating, I need a safety team. I don't need just me and an admin. I need a team. And I want to hire
Mhm.
Chevon. And oh, by the way, I want to hire two more people just like her.
Mhm.
And she was
That
lucky
is
enough that
great.
she had the owners of the company said, okay, if this is what you believe and you think that this is going to turn things around for us,
Wow.
then go for it. So then one day I got a call from her and she said, I know you interviewed for this admin job, but I want something more and this is what I want. And what do you think? And I said,
Wow.
that sounds amazing.
Wow, that is so great.
So I felt like I got lucky again and I was able to switch and it was a great job. I was there for 5 years and we got to build. I think what I liked the most was we built a lot of things from scratch. They didn't really have a safety program for their internal
Sure.
employees, so we had to work on that. And then they
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have a safety program for their temporary employees, so we got to develop the different programs and the training, and they didn't really have a process in place to assess the environments or assess the companies that they'd be sending temporary employees to. So we got to build that whole
Yeah.
process from scratch. And it was such a fun learning experience. And then I also had a team of other people just like me that I could work with. So I wasn't all alone trying to do something, which
Mm-hmm.
I did have my manager. So I have to take that back. I did have my manager at the pet food manufacturer. So that was nice. But now I
Mm-hmm.
had a group of, it was four of us. And then we eventually got a fifth person to work on our team. And that was amazing. And we were all female. I just feel the need to throw that in. So
Wow.
it was a team of
Yes.
five of us that were
Power
all
team.
females. Yes. And then we're, doing all of these great things. And after a couple of years, when it got to the point where they wanted to see how the results were with their work comp,
Yeah.
we had done such a great job with work comp management and then all of these proactive things that we were doing to help decrease the amount of injuries we were seeing and decrease the severity of the injuries we were seeing. We ended up saving that company. Oh, I think they said it was somewhere around $3 or $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Oh,
the
I believe
first
it.
year that they actually
Mm-hmm.
got money back
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
what they had
Mm-hmm.
paid on their policy.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that was one of the biggest accomplishments was knowing that all the hard work that we did and all the hard work we did out in the field and training the branches and getting them to understand things that they should look for when they see the customers in terms of hazards and discussions they can have on ways that we could help them or other
Mm-hmm.
resources they could use to develop controls that could help with those hazards. It to know that that all actually translated to something tangible that we could see. We helped them save $3 million.
Wow.
It was
Congratulations.
really awesome.
Everything you did up to that point really was setting you up for success in a staffing agency. Your eyes had seen so many work environments when you're doing these, risk assessments for these different places the temporary workers were going into. You could build on all of that history that you had to be able to make it meaningful.
Yeah, and I never would have thought. One of the things when I interviewed with my manager at the staffing company, I said, how does safety fit in with this? I had done some contractor safety at the pet food manufacturer, but I never really dealt with temporary employees. So this was
Yeah.
all new to me. And then as we started formulating what our program looked like and started realizing we need to go out and see these industries, all of a sudden I said, oh, wait. I did this before and I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of these places before. And so
Yeah.
seeing that tie
Mm-hmm.
that I never thought would happen
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was really cool. I
I feel like the work that the five of you did is likely on the leading edge for staffing agencies. I'm
I feel
I
I
don't
have to
think there's
agree with that because other
yeah.
staffing companies that our customers would be working with, we would often get feedback. Well, my other staffing companies don't do
Right.
that. We don't even see anyone come out and take a look at the work environment or ask us for job descriptions or offer us
Yeah.
safety services or safety training. And
Right.
they,
Right.
they don't train their temporary
Mm-hmm.
employees on safety before they get out here. We were hearing all of those gaps, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it was good knowing that. And I mean, and we used those recommendations, if you will, from the temporary worker
From
initiative to help build our
right.
program. We wanted to make sure all of those gaps were being addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, and for people who are listening to this, statistically what you did is is very different. It is on the leading edge, and if people want to listen to the other side of the story, episode number 13 of the Accidental Safety Pro, with a filmmaker named David Desario, shines a light on really the crisis in the country of temporary workers and the lack of safety that they have. So Chevon, you really are on the cutting edge of this. So, if people are listening and want to compare and contrast two sides of a story, knowing that you did it and with great success, I think is just something to be celebrated. So
Yeah.
well done.
And I know that there's a lot of people out there who look at staffing agencies and, think they don't really care about temporary employees and they're not concerned with their safety and things like that. I get it because I know there are a lot of agencies out there that are like that. But there are some that are trying to make a change.
Right.
And I think that for companies, who are looking for temporary employees, they need to be just as proactive as we were trying to be proactive. Take the time to get to learn about the agencies that you're going to be working with and what practices and policies do they have in place to protect the workers, and are they on the same page as you in terms of temporary employee safety. Those are great questions to ask and to find out so that you can work with those agencies who really do
Right.
care about their employees.
Yeah, Siobhan, next steps. You're in grad school now, right?
I am, yes. So I stayed with the staffing company for 5 years and then
Mm-hmm.
came into this training and education role a year ago now, just a little over a year ago. And I love it. I love all aspects of it. I love everything that I'm teaching. But I know that I have more that I could learn. And so I
Mm-hmm.
came to the conclusion that I think that getting a master's in environmental safety and health is going to help me to expand my knowledge and to be able to provide more information to the students that I teach. So I
Mm-hmm.
started the master's program in environmental health and safety with UW Whitewater last fall. So I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
second semester right now.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm interested for you to share, drum roll, a research project that you're thinking about doing or have committed to doing.
Yes, no, I know I know I definitely want to propose it, and I've been told that my proposal should be accepted, but I just loved so much the work that I did with the staffing company and so much that I learned in regards to temporary employee safety, and I want to continue on that. So my research project is going to be around temporary employees and temporary safety. And the first angle I
Yay.
want to look at is with the employers. So just kind of taking a look at,
Mm-hmm.
when we're looking at the temporary worker initiative, how much of this are you following? How much above and beyond are you doing? What's your engagement like with temporary employees? Things around
Yeah.
that nature. That's continued to be a passion of mine, so I want to do more research into it and see what I can come up with. And there isn't a lot of research that's been done yet. So the initiative
Right.
came out in 2013, but
Mm-hmm.
how successful has it been? I don't know. So I
Yeah.
guess that's what I want to find out.
Exactly. Well, on behalf of a grateful industry, thank you for doing that. People
Absolutely.
are people are going to want to read this research. This is wonderful.
I'm pretty excited about it. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So Siobhan, it didn't turn out so bad following in your mom's footsteps, has it?
No, it hasn't at all. And it's funny, her and I actually were just talking the other day, and she says, it's even funny the way your career happened because she did a little bit of a stint with OSHA, but then she went and worked for an insurance agency before she became a
Mhm.
professor at the university.
Yeah.
So she's like, you even did some of the jobs that I did, and I didn't even tell you about it. So it's just,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah.
Siobhan, what's your mom's first name?
Deborah.
So, Deborah, thank you for bringing us Siobhan. What a gift to the industry. Thank you.
I know, and she's done amazing things too. I always say, Mom, you have a pretty cool career yourself. And she's like,
Hmm.
I'm just the one teaching our future. And I said, Mom, that's a pretty important thing.
It is a pretty important thing. Sounds like maybe your mom needs to be on the Accidental Safety Pro.
I think that would be really neat because I love hearing her story. So I'll
Right?
listen.
You work on that, and like
I
let's
will.
let's let's get Deborah on the
Yeah,
podcast. We can have a mother-daughter team. That would be so cool.
absolutely. I will work on that. I think that would be really
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
So Siobhan, advice for anyone in the profession or even maybe grad school in general as we close out our time together today?
I guess a couple of things. You bring up the grad school. If there's one thing I would have done differently, I probably would have went back to grad school a good 5 years earlier than I am. So if you think that's something you're going to want to do, jump on that bandwagon sooner than later if you can. But my other thing is, don't be afraid to try new opportunities. I started out in the insurance industry and then I went into beverage manufacturing and then, pet food manufacturing and then staffing. And now I'm doing training and education. And, the different industries, they bring you a different perspective on this
Hmm.
safety and health profession. And it really helps to expand your skills. So, I feel I've talked about a lot of different jobs. It probably sounds like I job hopped a little bit.
Mm. Sounds
But
sounds a lot like it sounds a lot like my resume actually.
yeah, but
Yeah.
but I think that it was worth it, and it's kind of made me well-rounded, and I think that it
Hmm.
it, it allows me different experiences that I can draw from when I'm teaching the students that I teach now. So don't be
Yeah.
afraid of those new opportunities, and if it's in an industry different from what you're used to, that's okay. It's just going to broaden your experience and broaden your
Hmm.
knowledge and make you a
Hmm.
more well-rounded safety and health professional.
Perfect. Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you so much for being on the
Oh,
podcast
thank you
today.
so much for having me.
And thank you all so much for joining in and listening today. And thank you for the work that you all do to make sure your workers, including your temporary workers, make it home safe every day. You can listen to all of our episodes at vividlearningsystems.com or subscribe in the podcast player of your choosing. If you have a suggestion for a guest, including if it's you, please contact me at social@vividlearningsystems.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.